Hey guys, I'm just I'm not feeling good enough for this crap right now, but here we are. So, we're with Niche Gamer. Magic the Gathering is considering removing Druids and Shamans due to religious sensitivities. Witches have already been removed for similar reasons. So, in a world of fantasy genre, where you have clerics and shamans and druids and knights and this and that. Two of them, which are, types of religions that people still practice today. It may not be as common, but there are still people who practice shamanism, in shamanistic ways and uh, druidic, uh, religious type things, but it's not as common, but it still happens. They're taking that stuff out, or considering taking it out. Now, in this era where they're trying to appease everyone and say, oh, well, we're inclusive, how does removing druids and shamans show inclusivity? Witches, oh, they're the servants of Satan. Okay, what's your point? You have creatures in the game that are basically Satan itself, so what? What? At least one player pointed out this would ironically remove representation from these. Exactly, because there are still people who practice those types of religious, like ceremonies and stuff like that. It's get in, losers. We're making unwoke MTG. I demand that they remove white and black mana from the lore and use only state-approved rainbow colors. What about clerics? They should remove power and toughness as well. It's ableist. Yeah, I mean, you do one thing, and all this just to appease the 0.0001% of freaking lunatics who might feel offended, or they're taking out representation for reasons. Ridiculous. This is ridiculous. In that case, remove werewolves, vampires, mechs, gnomes, goblins, dwarves, elementals, etc. These can all be insensitive to those who identify as such. I feel like I dodged a bullet in not becoming interested in Magic the Gathering. Magic the Gathering has always been the worst mainstream trading card game. Why not just remove everything and call it a day? Just close shop because anything can offend someone. Exactly. That's the point. You're living in a world where someone's going to be upset and offended by something. And nowadays, it's just more and more like, oh, this offends me, that offends me. Well, you being offended offends me. Because you're so much of a freaking weak-willed pussy that you just can't accept the fantasy of fantasy genre, the fantasy genre. Instead, we have to try to make it reflect real life, and that's not the point. So in that case, just remove every magical creature, every race that isn't human, and then it could be called I don't know, not so magic the Gathering. Just a bunch of freaking humans, and just different colored humans standing around and talking about things that are sensitive, or not sensitive, of course, because we don't want to offend anyone. Oh, this is funny. Like Star Wars removing Jedi to avoid offending people who identify as Jedi. The best Western fantasy epic was written by a Japanese man, Berserk, taking elements from other cultures and remixing them into something cool has been happening for ages. This recent trend of shaming it and labeling it cultural appropriation is the death of fantasy. What's next? Dragons and elves? What are they gonna what they are gonna what they are going to print on the cards then? Teletubbies and Muppets? Didn't they remove witches because it didn't really make sense for witches and wizards to be different tribes? They should just cancel the whole game at this point. They should just cancel the whole game. Yeah. Has anyone reached out to the orc community? I'm glad I quit playing it after high school. Wizards of the Coast is terrible. Yeah, I mean, they're taking the fantasy out of fantasy games. Then we're gonna be left with nothing but boring fucking humans. Like, if you want to be a human, then don't get into fantasy games where there's these magical creatures and different religions and different. Just if you want to be some boring, miserable fucking cunt, then just don't get into this shit. Leave it alone and let other people enjoy it. Seriously, I don't even fucking play Magic the Gathering. But I'm tired of this shit because I've said this before. They're putting their grimy little miserable fucking hands in everything. TV shows, video games, movies, trading card games, comic books. Everything is being touched by these miserable, miserable fucking twats. And it's ruining it for people who actually enjoy it. And no one speaks up against it. I'm sure there's some people working for Wizards of the Coast who disagree, but they're afraid to lose their jobs. They're afraid of being canceled. So the best way to do it is don't support them. Refuse to buy the product. Really simple as that. And when they lose money, and I mean, it'll be sad because all those people who are going against this are going to possibly lose their jobs. But things aren't going to change if you just allow it to keep going on the way it is. These people who force this crap are the most miserable, intolerant asshats on this fucking planet. And they want everyone to be as miserable as they are. So in the process of trying to, inclusivity, they are discriminating against people who possibly still practice those ways. And also because they're very hard in the lore of fantasy. I mean, look at World of Warcraft. You have two classes, Druid and Shaman. They've always been a part of the fantasy genre. It's just they don't want you enjoying anything anymore. They want you to be as miserable as they are, and whenever you find something you can enjoy, they don't want you they don't want it as an escape from reality. No matter what you're doing, they want their fucking bullshit to be shoved down your throat at all times. They want their ideology to be shoved down your throat at all times. They want this crap to be shoved down your throat at all times. So when you're doing something to escape reality, good luck. Because it's not going to be an escape from reality. You're going to be continued to just be thrown into reality with their ideological bullshit, with this freaking removing fantasy genre type things for their bullshit. So, again, I keep bringing up Doctor Who. A lot of people watch Star Wars, Star Trek. When we watch these things, it's like, yeah, you sit down and watch Lord of the Rings, right? Lord of the Rings. I don't sit down and watch Lord of the Rings to be freaking preached to. I don't watch Lord of the Rings to feel, oh my god, I can see myself. No, I watch it to escape reality. And then you have crap like the Rings of Power, people inserting their own ideological shit in there. Ruining the story, ruining Tolkien's work. Changing things when they said themselves, oh, we're not going to change anything. So instead of being able to sit down and enjoy something set in a fantasy world like Magic the Gathering, instead it's taking things out and making it more like reality. What's the point of even having hobbies anymore? Because these people are reaching their grimy, miserable, weak-willed little fucking pansy hands into everything out of inclusivity and representation, but they're removing things that are inclusivity and representation. Because again, people still practice this stuff today. It might be rare, but they still do it. And I'm sure some of those rare cases where people do practice that, some of them might actually be playing Magic the Gathering. And now druids and shamans are possibly being removed. So now that representation is gone. Good job, guys. Good fucking job. It's just infesting everything. Everything. You can't play a game anymore. You can't read a comic book anymore. You can't play a fucking card game anymore. You can't play a tabletop game, like fucking Dungeons and Dragons without all this bullshit being forced down your goddamn throat. Or, ooh, well, this is offensive. The only one who thinks it's offensive are you and people who are like you. Everyone else is fine with it. Oh, well, orcs are, people to see the orcs and about black people. It's like, I've never looked at an orc and said, hey, that reminds me of a black person. If you look at an orc and you think of black people, you're the fucking racist. Everyone else has. My main in World of Warcraft for the longest time was a fucking orc. Like, if you look at a fantasy race and think of black people, you're the fucking racist. If you look at druids and shamans and religious sensitivities and you're the fucking cunt here. Not everyone else. You're the one with the problem. And this is why we can't have good things anymore. So just don't have any hobbies anymore. Because no matter what you try to enjoy, whether it be trading card game or tabletop thing like Dungeons and Dragons, or sci-fi like Doctor Who or nope, it's infesting everything. This fucking woke bullshit pushing ideology down people's throats at all times. It's just infesting everything. And for what reason? For what? Pandering, brownie, like what are we doing it for? It's fucking pathetic. But yeah, Magic Gathering considering the removal of shamans and druids because they're so fucking miserable, and they're trying to make Magic the Gathering more like real life. Soon it's just gonna be nothing but humans. Anyway, that's gonna do it for me. You guys know the drill. I'll see you guys later. Bye, guys.